All right. Hi, everybody. So like I mentioned, I am anticipating that you are the group of students who either loves research and is excited to do more in med school, or for whatever reason has realized that you're going to need to do research in med school. And so we'll talk more about that. What I have found is that if I get up in front of all of our cohorts of 200 students per cohort and talk about research, I'm going to stress out one group or another. You have a lot of peers who don't have to do research for their goals. And if I start talking about timelines and getting in the weeds of how to do it, they're going to get really stressed out. And then at the same time, if I tell everyone, just relax, don't worry about research at all, that can be super stressful for those of you who actually do want to get in the weeds of how to do it. So that's why I kind of have you separated, and I'll continue to kind of frame things differently for different types of students throughout your next 4 years here. So I'll support you all equally. But that's kind of why I'm separating you out. Here's our agenda, kind of the who, what, why, when, and how, and we're going to emphasize in your group more of the timelines for doing research in one and beyond. Key resources and key strategies is a new addition that I didn't emphasize for students who maybe aren't doing any research right now. So last opportunity to bail. If you realize, hey, this is going to stress me out, I'm not ready to think about research yet, log on off. I promise I love you anyway. And you can check the video recording of the newbies session, which will be up on Canvas when this one is in the next few days. I'm expecting that most of you are on that right-hand side. You've done research before, or you know that you're going to do more in the future. I have only met a couple of you if I happen to have interviewed you or you've reached out already. So for context, my name is Lillian Sims. I'm a medical education researcher. So my PhD is in education policy. I was actually a high school teacher and my husband was an engineer. And he just woke up one day and said, you know, I kind of think I wish I'd gone to med school instead of an engineer, which was horrifying to both of us. We were like, oh my gosh, that's 15 more years of school. What are you doing? But it really changed the trajectory of both of our professional lives. He ended up becoming a physician. And as a teacher, watching my husband go through medical school, I thought it was the most fascinating educational environment I'd ever heard of. So many smart people, so much to learn, such high stakes. And how do you support them? How do you make sure that we're training good doctors? So we moved here 8 years ago from Mississippi, and we both did our postgraduate training. He did residency and fellowship here, and I did my PhD here. So I stayed on in faculty. We have a small group of medical education researchers who study how to teach our students better and how to help our faculty do educational research. I teach in ICM, which is the small group course you will all take weekly from August through March. And if you're a Lexington student, even if you're not in my small group, you'll see me once a month when I help run what we call the ICM lab. So when you go in and practice talking to a standardized patient, that's actually how I ended up becoming the director of medical student research. A couple of years ago, I was hearing from students in labs, I was just checking in saying, hey, how's it going? What kind of support do you need? And they were saying, we need more infrastructure to help us do research. We need more people helping us figure that out. So Dr. White, the senior associate dean of our medical school, has been super supportive with building that infrastructure. And you'll notice that we have a lot of kind of relatively new supports in the last couple of years that will benefit your cohort and those just above you that maybe weren't there if you're talking to someone who's maybe a current resident or a little more advanced. I like to focus on studying rural students and first generation medical students in particular, again, because of my life experience. I remember my husband Googling, like, what's an optometrist? What's an ophthalmologist? We didn't know what DO or MD meant. And that made it really fascinating and really challenging. So a lot of my research is on rural students and students who are new to medicine and how that shapes your specialty choice, your career interests, your support needs. And out of that, I run the Med Mentors program, which is a group of M2s, M3s, and M4s who help kind of be there as a friendly near peer. We like to think of it as like everyone needs an older sibling who just went through med school and can give you all the inside info. So that's what Med Mentors are there to do. And you'll hear me talk more about them later. In the role of Director of Medical Student Research, here's how I can help you. Number one, I am very student facing. So we have a big team, but I get to focus mostly on interacting with you, the students. So I give talks like this a couple times a year, make sure everybody's aware that research is a thing in medical school, but I mostly end up meeting with students one-on-one. I keep my Fridays open to meet with students back-to-back, as many people as want to talk to me. Sometimes it's like once a month, once a semester, once a year. Occasionally it's students who talk to me and never want to talk to me again because they've decided they don't have to do research and they're happy about it. And I'm not that I can't talk on days that aren't Friday. That's just kind of the streamlined system we have where you can sign up for a meeting without having to email back and forth to set something up. It's proved helpful for me to be a neutral party sometimes if a student maybe is struggling with a mentor, can't find a mentor, needs some additional support, their mentor needs additional support, I can kind of be like a neutral intermediary to help with projects that are kind of struggling. And like I mentioned before, I've really enjoyed building our research infrastructure. So I'll tell you on the next slide about our growing team of people that will help you do research. It's expanded exponentially in the last couple of years, which is amazing. And I also spend a lot of time developing content for the Canvas page. So research, unless you're an MD PhD student, is fully extracurricular at UKCOM. I love that because that means if it's not for you, you don't have to do it. It's not part of any required course to become a physician here. The flip side of that is there's no required course where I can kind of teach all of you something, or we can have like quality control for research knowledge. So everything that we offer, at least in my area outside of the MD PhD program and the concentration, is on Canvas. So I think most of you probably found it already. If you haven't, make sure and join. That's where we're saving everything we can that would be helpful for students. And that's where we primarily do our outreach as well. Here's just some of our research team. Depending on which campus you're at, you might interact with some of these people more than others. Dr. Wang, right next to me in the line, is our assistant director. She's a radiologist. She kind of is faculty facing. So we deploy her out to talk to different departments and divisions and try to help them ramp up more opportunities for students and figure out ways to get students plugged into existing research. Dr. Rapella, third in the black jacket, runs the concentration, which will be a great fit probably for a lot of you if you're in this session. And then Dr. Honorado with the brick background is our Northern Kentucky lead, and Dr. Morris with the gray background is our Bowling Green lead. A question I get every year is Northern Kentucky and Bowling Green students saying, well, can I still do research in Lexington? Of course you can. Lots of research can be done asynchronously, but you also have the benefit of local opportunities, and sometimes those are actually easier to find just because it's a smaller cohort. Maybe someone's handing something off to you. So you're going to want to be friends with Dr. Honorado and or Dr. Morris if you're at one of those campuses. And then some of those folks, starting with Dr. Ramond in the glasses and further to the right, are just experts in different areas that we've kind of brought into the fold so that you say, if you reach out with a QI question, Dr. Ramond can help. If you reach out with a question about AI and research, Dr. Tay can help. Dr. Saha is one of the departmental contacts. He's the guy you reach out to if you want to do CT surgery. And Julie Volkenheim on the right is one of our med center librarians who works with students. So you've got a huge group of people who are there to support you, in addition to the folks in formal programs who are teaching or overseeing projects for you. So you should never feel alone while you're doing research. This part I'm going to try to kind of blitz through because it was the primary section for students who are new to research who are wondering, like, why would I do this? But I don't want to miss someone who isn't aware, who knows they're going to have to do a lot of research and hasn't really thought about the scope of what research is. So I feel like I'm hurrying, and I'm sorry, I don't want to keep y'all too long. But if you're left thinking, wait, I want to dwell on this more, please go check out the recording of the newbie session where I was able to spend more time on these slides. So the key thing I want you to know is there's a bunch of different types of research. And if you did bench science research as an undergrad and it wasn't your thing, which is pretty common, that is not the only type of research you can do. Those three at the top are the most common. Of course, everyone wants clinical projects. The ones at the bottom are going to be really high yield for those of you that are strong researchers and can juggle multiple projects. You might jump in and do a case report or a QI project or a medical education project in addition to a large clinical or bench science project. So just keep in mind that if you're not liking research, you're probably not liking one project or one type of project. Don't give up. Come talk to me or talk to someone on our team, and we can probably help you find something you would enjoy more. And another top question I get, does it have to be in the specialty I pick? Absolutely not. It doesn't matter what specialty you're interested in. As an M1 or an M2, you can pursue any projects. You can always spin it as a learning experience, skill building, learning what you didn't like, that kind of thing. So you should never be thinking, oh gosh, I want to be a dermatologist. I have to find a dermatology project as an M1. You've got plenty of time to do that, and eventually you will want to do that. Not a huge urgency there at all. I will share this with you every time I talk to your whole cohort. In the next few slides, I'm going to dig in so deep about your CV, and it's going to sound very self-centered, like how do you look good on paper? And that's just because it's my job to make sure you look good on paper and to kind of make sure that you toot your own horn and that you can speak in residency and career interviews to the experiences that you've had. It doesn't mean it's not meaningful work. So I love sharing this photo. It's been over 100 years now since a medical student isolated the hormone insulin. He's the reason all type 1 diabetics are alive today. I have an 8-year-old daughter who was unexpectedly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I come home every day and I'm grateful that she's alive because of a med student doing summer research. So you may get up into a project that you feel like is not really going anywhere, or it doesn't feel like it's very enjoyable for you. Just try to remember that it's always serving a higher purpose. If it's not, if it feels like fake research, definitely come talk to me. And what we're going to dig into now is how to make sure that you look good based on the research you do. All right, so I hope you all know this. CV building matters for residency, just like it did for getting into med school. You all got into med school, so you know how to do that. That's a given, that anything you do, we want to make sure it goes on your CV, which is just kind of a nerdier version of a resume. Those things that are brighter blue in the middle, think of it like the CV is the flour. You're making a pizza, it's the crust, and then those things are the toppings. So you need some toppings. Otherwise, it's kind of like not a good pizza. So any project you do, you're going to want to make sure, am I building skills? Am I meeting people that can help me? Am I learning skills that will make me be a better doctor? If none of those things, it might not be a very useful project. You don't have to do it. Again, things that you likely know, but I want to have good quality control and make sure everyone knows these. There are key metrics that help you be successful in the residency and beyond. Research is just an extracurricular. So you will see and hear people talk about how, oh, I'm going to do neurosurgery, so I have to have 20 publications. First of all, they're usually inflating. But second of all, the important thing to know is it's just an extracurricular that helps you look better on paper. So those key metrics on the left, kind of in order of importance, are your academic performance, your clinical experiences, your evaluations, the exams you take as an M3 and M4. Of course, if you're quote unquote a gunner, and I say that lovingly, you're going to want to do well in classes and try to get the distinction in classes, which will really help you. You're going to want to try to pass step 1 and make sure that you don't have any red flags on your transcript. Then you're going to hopefully have great recommendation letters and a great personal narrative and everything. And only then, really, our program's going to be digging into, well, what kind of service, leadership, and research did this candidate have? So I cannot stress enough, even though research is my job, that it is an extracurricular that does not counterbalance academic red flags, poor performance, professionalism violations, a reputation for being a taker or being selfish or being someone that backs out of projects. So don't get caught up in the weeds too much. Way too often I hear from students who say, well, I started to struggle in classes, and so I leaned harder into my other resume building, my other strengths. You cannot do that. Your classes are what makes you a qualified doctor. Then when you're doing well in classes, you can go on and do additional things in order to stand out even more. So please, 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 please remember that. Key variables that I'm assuming brings you here tonight is that you are aiming for a competitive specialty or location. So maybe you want to do a specialty that's not normally competitive, but you want to move to Hawaii or Miami. And just by virtue of it being a cool place to live, there's many people applying there. Or maybe you want a couples match, and so you feel like statistically it's going to be a little harder to match. Those are some of the reasons that students might do more research, which again, just means doing more CV building of any variety. It doesn't have to be research, it can be different things. If you're in that middle category, an MD PhD student, I'm assuming that you have actual research love and aspirations for your career, which is wonderful. And some of you may not be MD PhD students, but you may realize, hey, I want to be in an academic position. I want to do research long term. I love that. I do want you to know that you can work somewhere like UK and not do research. So a lot of the doctors you work with aren't doing research. They're not all researchers. But certainly if you get into it and you think, wow, this is fascinating, even if you're not an MD PhD student, that's a great reason to do lots of research, because it will ultimately help you get the career you want, even if it's kind of above and beyond what you need for residency. And then finally, that third bullet, if you're aiming for a program that values research highly, in our region, Vanderbilt is known for this. If there's a certain place you want to go that expects all of its residents to publish or includes a research year in its residency curriculum, then it makes sense that you're not just CV building, you're actually establishing the expertise that's kind of the minimum requirement for that program. So those are the students that I expect to want to do extra research. And you should not be comparing yourself to students that don't feel like they need to do as much, because you never know where they're aiming or what their other metrics are. Again, I'll try to go through this quickly. This is all in Canvas. Check the recording if you want to see more. But every 2 years, we get this data of how much research students report having done and whether they matched or didn't match. And you can generally see number of projects ranges from a couple to 8 or 9. Matched is the blue. The thing I would really highlight is not just projects, but outcomes. So if I'm toggling between these, you can see that dermatology students have 6.4 projects or experiences. And then presumably those are the ones that match. But those same students, out of those 6.4 experiences, accumulate 27.7 outcomes on average. That means posters, presentations, and papers. So the key thing for you as students who plan to do research is that every project should have an outcome. Before you even begin the project, there should be a goal outcome. Is it going to a certain conference? Are you going to try to publish it? And you can really see the distinction there between the students who match and the students who don't. It's not so much in number of projects, which is just maybe like someone working with one mentor for a year, but what they're documenting out of that project. And here's why that matters. Well, pause. I love these quotes recently from some residency program directors where they basically said, everything needs to come together into a whole narrative. You can't just kind of slap a bunch of things on your CV and expect to impress a program director. You need to be able to tell a story about how your experiences helped you identify a clinical passion or helped you build some important skills. The reason I have that quote there is this is how you can describe those things to your residency program directors and interviewers and on your application ultimately. You can either list them as one of your 10 experiences or as an outcome. So for most residencies, you're going to be able to describe the 10 things you did in medical school that were the most important to you. They don't have to be research. So if you have a really intense research experience, I would list it as one of the 10. Or you're going to be able to list outcomes, journal articles, poster presentations, conference papers. It currently says non-peer reviewed outcomes, but that is changing starting this year so that it has to be peer reviewed. You'll find that any research experience you undertake either needs to be a really important thing that is one of the top 10 things you do in med school, so you can write a whole paragraph about it, or it needs to have very clear outcomes like publications or presentations or posters. If not one of those two things, then you can't really document it for residency. Now, it may still be worth your time if you're working with someone who's going to give you a rec letter or who's really giving you lots of access to skill building and stuff, but it's not going to be able to be documentable for the match. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about outcomes. All right, quick pause. Kentucky is beautiful. I moved here, like I said, a few years ago, and I never want to leave. We talk about CVs all the time, but life is much more important than your CV. Don't get too hung up on it. Don't be stressing yourself or your classmates out trying to compare. We're not pre-meds anymore. We're all friends now. All right, now I'm going to dig into this a little more than I do with your classmates that aren't sure if they want to do research. Here's the timelines that we typically recommend. Let's start with just M1. First of all, your goal in the next few weeks is to establish good habits, good sleep habits, good eating habits. You need to be cleaning your apartment or your house and taking walks and being organized and checking email. And then, of course, doing well in anatomy, doing well as you begin foundations, which is very different from anatomy. You don't need to be thinking about research until you feel like your life is running pretty smoothly and you have extra bandwidth. Now, I can't stop you. It's extracurricular. If you're already doing a project or you want to work hard on something in July right before you start, that's fine. But I don't think any of you should feel any pressure to do research at all until at least you've gotten through the second foundations test. A lot of students do well in anatomy. Foundations is really different, but they're thinking, I've gotten through one whole class, and they jump right into a big time-consuming project, and then they struggle in foundations. So I would please give you full permission to wait till about mid-October to even think about joining any projects. And again, if you weren't in this room, I was speaking to the whole cohort, I would be saying, wait till December, wait till January or March, think about next summer. So I'm assuming y'all are fairly highly motivated to jump right in, but I am in no way pressuring you to even do that in October. It's really just going to depend on when you feel like you have extra bandwidth. Because again, trading off your academic performance for extracurriculars is not a good trade-off. I would be aiming for those distinction awards or aiming for, a solid academic foundation in the meantime. Once you feel like you have bandwidth, or in the next few weeks before starting school, it would be helpful to create a CV. Often students who are looking for research, a faculty member will say, sure, send your CV. And then the student says, what's a CV? Dr. Sims, can you look at this? Also, I have a test tomorrow. I don't have time to write this. So if you have a chance to kind of take your old resume from pre-med and turn it into a CV, which is kind of just a nerdier, more academic version of a resume, it's a good time to do that. There are examples on Canvas. There's tons in Canvas that I'll talk about, more skill building opportunities that can help you kind of figure out what you might want to pursue. And then I cannot emphasize this enough, that you need to network. It sounds very like selfish, but just like put on your extrovert hat as much as you can this fall. A lot of our student interest groups are going to be having their big meet everyone meeting in August or September. The peds group, the surgery group, the dermatology group, all the specialties, all the specific subject area interests like the AI group, the med ed group, the first gen group. Go to as many of those as you can, because that's when you meet people. You'll meet near peers who could become mentors. You'll meet faculty who you could shadow. You'll meet faculty and near peers who could connect you with research. So the students who do well are the ones who are just getting out there and meeting people in the fall, versus the students I hear from in maybe like March of M1 year, and they say, I don't know anyone, nobody knows me, I don't have any idea what my interests are, but I feel like I'm supposed to be doing research. That's a lot harder. So networking really is worth your time. Don't do it in a creepy way. Do it as in like you really do want to meet these people, not like you want to use them for their connections. You're just wanting to meet people that have shared interests. It doesn't have to be transactional. And then you can be thinking about things like shadowing or volunteering as well, even if you're not actually committing yet. The bubble that says know thyself. This is another thing you can be thinking on in the next few months. What specifically are you interested in? What skills do you have? Who might be a good mentor? These are things to be thinking on, because we as researchers hear from students all the time who say, hey, do you have a project for me? And that's not compelling. I want to hear from someone who says, hey, I read this paper you wrote. I love this particular point. Are you still doing research in this area? I would love to contribute. And then you feel like, okay, someone actually cares about my work and they're going to do a good job. I'm going to give them a shot. So you want to kind of do that background research to know what you're actually interested in and what someone does. Only then do you potentially start applying for programs and reaching out to mentors. Again, with no urgency, that can be like mid-October all the way till next April or beyond if needed. Don't forget, academics always come first. That said, you do have a professional reputation. And a few times a year, I hear from mentors who are grumpy because they say, this student ghosted me at the 11th hour because they said they had a big exam and y'all told them that their academics matter more. That is true, but you do still want to act like a professional. Like you can't just drop balls in your professional life without repercussions. So if you realize, oh gosh, I've gotten in too deep, this new class I'm struggling in, you've got to man or woman up and tell your mentor that you need some time, ask if you can help bring someone else in, talk to me about some sort of damage control. Don't just leave people hanging, because you'd be surprised how many people know one another across different departments, and you'll end up hurting your reputation more than the project would have added to your reputation. All right, here's what I would go for in terms of progression. Again, if you're kind of a committed researcher, not required for every student. For each major project, some will be minor, like a little case report, I would start with a UK-COM research event. So those students that are racking up 30 outcomes, it doesn't differentiate what's what. You don't have to get to 30 outcomes to be considered a good candidate, but you probably need a few. And so you're going to try to get, you're going to start small and scale up. You're going to try to get a UK internal presentation at the beginning, like a work in progress for any major undertaking. You may do those as M1s and M2s. There's an event in November for each campus. That's the fall showcase. And there's events in March and April as well. That's where you show up with your half-finished project and you say, here's some preliminary data, and that counts as your first presentation, so it's in the bag. Then you can expand to a bigger conference. For those of you who are feeling highly motivated, you could probably present next August and September at the Kentucky ACP and Heartland events. You can also attend those this fall to kind of learn what to expect. You'll get invites on campus. That's a great place to present case reports or minor like QI type projects. And then you'll see similar opportunities if you've got alerts on Canvas, things like the upcoming Appalachian Conference or other state conferences. Again, scale up to the regional level. Then you aim for a national conference, ideally a specialty conference. So my husband's a nephrologist. His students interested in nephrology aim for the Kidney Week conference every year. My students interested in medical education aim for the AAMC conference every year. Those can have a very long lead time, like 8 or 9 months sometimes, between when you submit and when you actually attend. And so you're going to want to plan way ahead. And those are likely going to actually happen in your second or even your third or fourth year because of that turnaround time. So that's why a project that you begin as an M1 can really only mature by the time you're about an M3 because of how long these things take, which I'm sure you know if you've done research before. And finally, not every project is going to lead to a publication. It's great if it does. That can also take a lot of time, especially if you get rejected and you have to resubmit elsewhere or do revise and resubmit. So you're potentially planning to submit to your biggest conference or to your journal for publication by halfway through M3 year. So that gives you about 2.5 years, which is why you don't need to rush into anything right now, but probably by beginning of M2 year, you've already started your biggest project. So you're thinking of maybe 2026, the second half of M1, summer after, and the first half of M2 as sort of your biggest opportunities to embark on high quality projects that are going to yield big presentations or publications. And again, all outcomes are not created equal. For most of you in almost every specialty, if you get a first author paper in a good publication, that you're good, rubber stamp. You're probably just fine on research. And for those of you in the very most research intensive specialties, you'll probably be wanting to aim for additional things. But you're going to want to think about quality over quantity as well. Someone with 8 case reports at UK only conferences is going to be valued less than someone with a first author publication in a big journal. So it can definitely be worth your time to put more time into one high quality project, but ideally you're getting a few different outcomes from it. You're working towards a publication or a big conference. Make sure you're not double dipping, and we'll talk more about that soon. Here's your progression timeline wise. Like I mentioned, you're going to start in the fall making connections, exploring interests. I study specialty choice. I think it's the coolest thing ever. I also think it's insane for you to be expected to decide what kind of doctor you want to be at this point when you've probably only seen a couple of types of doctors, whoever inspired you to become a physician. So with absolutely no expectation that you're actually picking your specialty, you are exploring your interest. You're thinking, do I like surgical things? Do I like young patients or old patients or certain populations? And that's going to help you narrow down what types of projects would be meaningful to you. And you're going to start considering this fall some things you can apply for that are research related, the concentration and some summer research programs that I'll talk about in a bit. In the spring, you're probably figuring out who your mentors are for summer projects. And those can often start in February or March, but they're really going to ramp up in the summer. And most of our students that are doing a lot of research are working really hard in the summer between M1 and M2 to make a lot of progress while they're not enrolled. That does not mean you cannot go to the beach, get married, travel Europe, have a second job, but you are going to want to plan ahead to make some progress towards a time-intensive project. You can take the whole summer off, but you'll then be juggling your research around coursework. So just be aware that for most students who know they need to do a lot of research, they're going to do something in the summer after M1 just to take that pressure off of your academic semesters. M2 is very hard. This is another reason why we want you to set a really good academic foundation during M1, because otherwise you won't have extra bandwidth to do things like research. But in the fall, ideally, you're kind of pushing towards outcomes for whatever your spring and summer 2026 projects were, and you're mapping your long-term outcomes. So maybe you're going to present, I would expect many of you to present at the fall showcase events next fall 2026, and then shortly after be submitting to larger conferences with the same projects or different components of the same project. And then you start dedicated preparing for step 1 in March of 2027. And you are going to want to hand off your projects to some lovely little near peers who are M1s behind you, or some people who are more advanced and have more time. You do not want your projects just sitting around for 2 months while you prepare for steps. So you're going to want to be thinking about, again, networking. Who are the people on my team who can help me when I'm in a tough class or when I'm in dedicated to keep those projects moving forward? In general, having lots of authors is not a big deal, especially if you can be first or second author a couple of times. So my most successful students are in a team of like 4 or 5 students who all want to do radiology, and they're all kind of working together on the same projects, and they're in different years. And so each of them are pulling weight at different times, and they're not kind of holding their cards close to their chest. They're being a team versus that one student trying to go it alone who's having to pause when things are difficult or pause when they're in intense time periods. They're not going to get nearly as much done. So you should never be trying to be a single author on something unless it's truly just a personal project that no one else can contribute to. Okay, and then M3 year, you're going to continue progress as you have time, which is going to be very limited. Clerkships are super busy. You are going to try to submit your biggest, you're going to shoot your biggest shots by about the midpoint of M3 year. A little later is okay, but you actually submit for the match for residency in early fall, like August-ish of your M4 year. So M4 year is almost non-existent in terms of research outcomes that will help you in the match. Not to say you can't keep moving forward, but If you're going to expect a multi-month turnaround for a national presentation decision or a paper, you're going to want to go ahead and try to get those things submitted in the middle of your N3 year. So there's plenty of time to reframe if needed. And then towards the end of N3 year, you're absolutely looking for short-term projects, case reports, QI, opportunities to mentor near peers. We have an M3 near peer mentorship award. A lot of you might be great at if you've been doing research all along by then. And you're kind of framing your narrative. You're thinking, okay, I've decided on my specialty. What have I done that's relevant to this specialty? Ultimately, your job is to convince interviewers that you're a safe bet for their program, that you're going to be successful and that you're going to want to stick with their program and not want to switch into a different specialty. So you're thinking about kind of bringing everything together and filling in those holes during M3 year. All right, again, I'm going to go through this quickly because there's more detail in the other video, but make sure you're on Canvas. Make sure you are getting announcements either in a weekly summary or a daily. I try to send them out at 8:30 in the morning. I try to not send out more than one a day. And notice that I always include, or as often as I can, I include a blurb that's kind of like advice. Like, why would you consider this? Who is this good for? So even if it looks like on the surface something that you wouldn't like, click them open when you have time so that I can have those teaching opportunities that otherwise I wouldn't be able to get out to you. All right, the top module I would definitely check out. In particular, there's a survey that helps me find you. Like when faculty or students come to me and they say, hey, we have a general surgery project, we need someone to do X, Y, and Z, I can go to the survey and find a student who can help. If you click on the UKCOM research contacts page, that's our most important page. It's where we list the contacts for each area. It's different in every area. When you get ready to do that, probably after October or at least into October, check out that page carefully and know that it updates regularly. Then when you get into the second module and beyond, it shifts from introductory information to resource sharing. So you see this screenshot here. This is from one of our med mentors, Dominic, who's going into M3. He's interested in some really competitive specialties. So he put together a video of how to do a chart review, which is a really common type of research that our students very frequently are involved in. So there's a bunch of videos like that that can give you a clue about certain types of research or things you might be asked to do. And then from there, you're going to have really in-depth modules on it's very common for students to be asked to help with an IRB or help with data analysis or help with survey design. And you can click on any of those modules and get more information or reach out if you're not sure if it has what you need. Then there's information in different areas. Like if you're thinking about exploring a new type of research, someone says, do you want to write a case report? And you think, I'm not sure what a case report is. You can go look there and get templates, get all sorts of how-tos. If I had to put in one slide, the resources I hope you use in 1 year, in terms of getting connected, it's those brainstorms that I mentioned. Reach out to me so I can help you make decisions about what to do. Reach out to your campus research coordinators for local opportunities. Dr. Seelbach is the career advising dean, and the ADDs are the advanced development directors. Those are faculty who have some time dedicated to helping students learn about their specialty. If you're interested in a competitive specialty in particular, you're going to want to talk to the ADD relatively early because it completely shifts your trajectory. So let's say you come into med school and you're thinking about doing ENT or family medicine. Well, ENT students are going to have to overachieve a lot more because there's a smaller programs that are able to be more competitive. It doesn't mean you're a better doctor. It doesn't mean you're going to get necessarily a better life in any particular way. It's just that some, due to supply and demand, can have more persnickety expectations for their applicants. So if you have something really competitive on your list, like ENT or ophthalmology, orthopedics, some of these others I've mentioned, you might want to go talk to that ADD early on and say, hey, I'm interested in your specialty. Like, can you tell me more? How can I shadow? What's it like? What was training like? And kind of make sure you have some good insight on that. And you can get connected there because you're going to be working way harder as long as that competitive thing is on your list. Some of my favorite conversations are when students realize, oh, I actually don't want to do a super competitive thing. And we can kind of talk about how they don't have to do quite so much CV building, which is really beautiful. The scholars.uky database is super helpful for finding mentors who actually publish. You will find friendly doctors who are great for shadowing who don't do any research. Or they'll say, yeah, you can join my project. I don't know how to do this yet. Let's get started. And it takes a long time and it's not very efficient. So scholars.uky is your friend for finding people who kind of been around the block when it comes to research. Similarly, talk to peers like the med mentors, the house leaders, the leaders in interest groups, who can tell you which faculty maybe are good mentors or who do a lot of research. And then in terms of official resources, The ORI website is super important. That helps you navigate an IRB protocol. The CCTS website is super important in terms of like finding statistics help or other data analysis help. This is obvious, but read your emails. Like if you don't read your emails, you're going to miss a ton of invitations, stuff on Canvas, but also just stuff that's shared via the student note or the weekly OME announcements or otherwise. So read your emails, be an organized person, and it's going to pay off for you, again, even if you're not actually joining a project yet. All right, this is a new section just for y'all, some key strategies. I will talk about these so much more with you in the future, but I want you to have a few kind of big picture ideas to start with. These are just tips from talking to hundreds of students over the years. First of all, you want the mindset of, can I join your team or how can I help with your ongoing efforts versus can I have a project? So you may want to start a whole new project, which is beautiful, but most students have the most success if they kind of volunteer as an assistant and get their feet in the door with a good mentor. And then if they want to come up with their own idea, or if the mentor is saying, let me help you develop your own idea, then they can run with that. These are the 4 things that tend to cause students challenges. In the top left, I've already mentioned vibes without a plan or mentor expertise. You will meet doctors and residents who you love, and you may really want to work with them, or you may have some cool idea that you really want to pursue. You have to have expertise. You have to ask around and figure out, is this a good idea? Is this going to yield outcomes? Is this going to be manageable time-wise and finance-wise? Otherwise, you might have a frustrating experience because you just don't have the expertise that you need. This is probably also a good place to mention that we do provide funding. OME can give 1 free poster printing a year and $500 towards conference travel. And on a case-by-case basis, we can provide additional funding. But that's another way in which you really want to talk to your mentor. Are they going to be traveling? Do they have funding to pay for journal submission? Because with 800 of you, even $500 isn't going to cover every potential expense. And you don't want to say, write a paper and then not be able to afford to take it anywhere. So figuring out if your mentors know what they're talking about, if they've done research, if they're actually able to guide you, and most importantly, if they have time, because sometimes they mean really well and they just don't have time. That's a really crucial thing to look out for. Look on Canvas for some list of like things to ask when you're talking to a potential mentor. Authorship awkwardness happens all the time. I heard from some students last year that they all want to do dermatology, so they're very, competitive and outcome oriented. And all 4 of them were working on a team together, and all 4 of them submitted the same project to 4 different conferences, which is absolutely double dipping. Program directors frown on it. It's also just kind of silly. You should figure out as a team, what are you submitting to? Who's going to be first author when? Can you rotate authorships? If you're not first author, are you 8th author? Kind of what are you getting out of this? And if you're submitting to multiple conferences, will the data support that? Can maybe you have first authorship or second authorship at one conference, and then you take the data in a different meaningful direction for a different conference? So a lot of teams kind of get split into subgroups. You got to have those conversations. Most mentors here love students and are happy to give you authorship. Sometimes it's other students who can make it challenging, or other like residents or staff. Just got to be upfront and figure out who is where in the authorship order. And of course, first author means you're doing the bulk of the work, so you want credit for that for sure. Please reach out if you have trouble there, but try to map it out way in advance as well. AI misuse is becoming frequently common. Students can really benefit from AI, where they're able to get it to help them create ideas or crunch data. However, protected patient information cannot necessarily go into your average AI engine. And there's lots of worries about plagiarism and hallucination. So we have a cool AI team led by Dr. Tamate if you want to learn more about that. But you're going to want to be careful which tools you use, because it can be a big red flag for a project. And finally, double dipping and what we call paper projects, which is just students who are kind of getting stuff on paper for the bare minimum, but it's not meaningful to them. They don't really know anything about it. Or like I mentioned earlier, they're submitting it over and over again. Program directors can see right through that. It's going to raise red flags. They would rather you have a few meaningful experiences than a whole bunch that you can't talk about. The goal is that when you submit for the residency match, someone can close their eyes and point at anything on your application and say, tell me about this. Tell me what was meaningful. Tell me what was a challenge. Tell me what was something you would do differently. And you can speak in detail about anything on your CV. Otherwise, I wouldn't even list it, because they may only mention one thing. And if it was kind of a nothing burger that you spent 2 hours on and someone slapped you in the authorship list, they're going to see right through that, and it's not going to endear them to you. So be cautious joining things if you don't feel like you can have a meaningful role, or know what the project is really about. And a lot of times just talking to a mentor about that will explain to them what you're going for. If you're reaching out to mentors, which I wouldn't necessarily do immediately, but when you're ready, this is an example from one of our med mentors. You can talk to Rob if you would like about his approach to research involvement. Notice that he's being really specific about his interest. He's being specific about his skills and his timeline. This kind of thing tends to go well. It does not tend to go well if you say, hey, I have 2 weeks off. Do you have a project so I can get authorship on something? And students do ask that. It doesn't go well. This kind of example is all over Canvas. Things to be thinking about in the next few months. Be self-aware. What am I actually interested in? What skills do I have? What outcomes do I need? Do I prefer to work in a team asynchronously during certain classes or after certain classes are over? So know thyself and be thinking through what you actually want to commit to. This is not the time to just say yes to everything and then you're floundering with a project that you're bad at. I'm not great at stats. I'm a qualitative researcher. I do interview and survey-based research. If I have to do stats, I'm going to go find somebody who's a stats expert because I'm inefficient. It's been too long. It's not my expertise, my preferred expertise anymore. So you're going to be in that same boat. There's going to be things you can learn to do, and then there's going to be things that are just not your skill set. And if you want a lot of research, you're going to want to look for the more efficient opportunities. Be curious. I'm hoping that you're doing things because you actually care about them. So look for specialty relevant connections. Diabetes, again, is a great example. It impacts every specialty. So maybe you do the big diabetes research fellowship in the summer and you go be a surgeon or you go be an internist. Regardless, you'll be able to describe how that experience is relevant to that work. So don't get the blinders on and be thinking, I want to be a cardiologist. I only want to do research with cardiologists. That's silly. There's lots of things that are relevant to cardiology, but think about how could I frame this experience as relevant to my current or future specialty interests? Similarly, if you're shadowing, I cannot stress this enough, relatively few of our faculty reach out stone cold to me and say, hey, I have a project. Can you find me a student? I would say that happens like a couple times a month. They turn to the nearest student and say, hey, Maddie, I hope you've enjoyed chatting with me. Do you want to work on this project that I've been doing? Or better yet, Maddie says, hey, Dr. Smith, I've loved working with you. I really want to learn about scholarly involvement. I've heard that there's these things called QI projects and case reports that are pretty manageable for students. Do you know of any that I might be able to contribute towards? And a lot of faculty will go, oh, yeah, actually, let me connect you with this project. That's going to be your ticket most of the time. So believe it or not, shadowing is actually a great use of your time in M1 because that's where you meet people that will help you meet the people who have projects. Similarly, if you do run into someone who's kind of a full-time or major time committed researcher, read what they publish, figure out what they actually do, figure out if they've published recently, and then think about whether you think you could contribute to their work. You've kind of got those people that are doing a lot of research, like I just described, and then those people that are practicing clinicians who are doing small scale research, little chart review projects, QI projects, med ed projects, case reports, very different approaches to research. So think about who those mentors are and who you want to work with. If you can work with a PhD researcher, I had a student ask me recently, does it look worse to work with a PhD researcher? No, it's fantastic because their full-time job is research. So they're going to know the conferences, they're going to know the journals, they're going to make sure you get published. If anything, I would bet on a PhD mentor more than an MD or DO just because they have dedicated time for research. So that should never give you any pause. A few professionalism tips. Use formal titles until you're told not to. You never know people's cultural or age differences. And if you're referring to them by their first name, they might decide that you're a rude little whippersnapper and they won't answer you, which would be a bummer. You can absolutely reply again if people ghost you. I cannot convey how many emails we get, like sometimes hundreds of emails in a day or two. So I always feel horrible when students say, oh, I emailed you a week or two ago and you never answered, so I thought you didn't care about me. That's never the case. If you email someone, set a reminder to email them again between 4 days and 7 days later, if it's not time sensitive. And then maybe a couple days after that, in a fresh email, you can just say, hey, any interest, ? I emailed you recently. No worries if you don't have bandwidth. Do you have any colleagues you might recommend that I reach out to? And a lot of times people will just let you get buried in their email and they'll be grateful that you reached back out. Third bullet, make sure that you agree in writing if possible to a clear timeline. I've had students find a great mentor and then the mentor gets really busy and the student thinks things are going to happen and things never happen and the students passed up other opportunities. So try to get to where y'all have an actual timeline planned once you meet a good mentor. When can I help you? Can we meet once a week or every 2 weeks? What time do you have dedicated to work on this? That kind of thing. All that's in Canvas if you need more examples of what to ask. And then a great role you can have as a med student to ensure a project's success, even if you don't know much about it, is to be the one setting the agenda for meetings, taking notes, sending follow-up emails, kind of keeping the records of, hey, everybody, here's what we're doing, here's our next step. Because again, your mentors might be really busy. They might be booked back to back to back. And if you're the one kind of picking up on that paperwork organizational challenge, then you can usually see a lot of benefits yourself as well. One tip I wanted to specifically mention qualitative research, in part because that's my thing, but in part because I hear from students all the time who think it's easier than quantitative research. Be aware there's a whole section on qualitative research, which is like survey and interview, word-based, not number-based, basically. A lot of students try to start some interview project. They'll say, I want to interview all the students from Kentucky versus those who aren't from Kentucky and see who's happier. It's a whole separate research area. You need different expertise. You need to actually have a compelling research question. There are great medical education and patient education conferences you can submit to and clinical conferences with qualitative data, but it is very complex and you often only get one shot if you're doing an interview study or a survey. So please just be thoughtful about that. Make sure you have a good mentor and really strong methodology. You'll have to do a really good literature review. You'll have to make sure that it's actually going to be something presentable or publishable. Don't fall into the trap of just assuming, oh, I can do a focus group of students in this interest group and submit it for a conference. It's probably going to be a waste of your time. But if that sort of research speaks to you, there's lots of resources here. It's a really fun area. I just don't want you to assume that it's easier because we often have students get bogged down trying to do that. And then they wish they had stuck with something a little more familiar to them. All right, specific opportunities. I'm talking a mile a minute because I want to have plenty of time here and for any questions. First of all, we have what's called a research concentration. I highly recommend that those of you considering doing a lot of research consider joining the concentration. I'm not sure if that applies to our MD PhD students. I believe you're eligible, but certainly if you think you're going to need to do a lot of research and you maybe don't have a ton of training already, I would heavily consider this. We have 5 concentrations. There's one in rural health, there's one in global health. You'll be able to apply for them about at the midpoint of your M1 year over the Christmas holidays. You do not have to do a concentration, but again, like I was saying earlier, it's a world of holistic review. So if you don't do a concentration, what else are you doing? You need to be deeply involved in something in order to be a compelling candidate. The research concentration is our biggest concentration. It provides structured courses that help you learn about research all the way through beginning spring of M1. There's a capstone course in M4 year. It really gives you kind of those guideposts to have successful research engagement, and you have direct teaching from Dr. Rapella and a bunch of folks who work for her. There's maybe only 10 or so students in each of the other concentrations, give or take, and 30 in the research concentration every year, give or take. So I really hope that a lot of you consider it, and it would again be best for those of you who feel like you need that help to learn how to do a lot of research. If you've been a full-time researcher in the past, you may have the bandwidth to consider a different concentration instead. So I'm heavily recommending that because if someone comes to me in January and says, hey, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon, I know that a lot of CV building is expected. I've never done research before and I didn't apply for a concentration. I'm going to be thinking, oh gosh, you just missed out on all of that additional support that would be perfect for you. So keep that in mind and be thinking and listening about the additional concentrations you can consider. This is one of the areas that med mentors and house leaders and student interest group leaders can all help you. You can, for instance, email me and say, hey, I'm thinking about these 2 concentrations. Can I talk to some students who have been in each of them? And we'll send you one of the med mentor students and they'll say, yeah, let me tell you all about the primary care concentration or the global health concentration. And that will help you narrow it down a little bit just based on student experiences. All right. There's a lot on this slide, but it's important information. Feel free to screenshot it. I'll have this in Canvas as well. These are the summer 2026 formal research programs that are tentative. I'm sure some dates will change. I'm sure some programs will be added and some might change, but this is what a lot of you are going to be aiming to apply for during your M1 year and then to do in the summer between M1 and M2. A big thing to know is that there was a large, very broad program called PSMRF that was run by CCTS, which is another office on campus, and they are sunsetting that program. So that program will not continue for your cohort. You may hear more advanced students talk about it because it was really big. They are shifting more departments or doing their own programs, which I think is great. For instance, you see the OB-GYN MSS program that allows students to have structured OB-GYN research experience if they're interested in OB-GYN. Whereas in the past, they kind of had to go find a mentor and sort of do all the work themselves of developing a project. So I don't want you to feel like you're losing an opportunity with that program going away, because there's a lot of more kind of specialized programs coming up to replace it. The Diabetes and Obesity Fellowship is probably the biggest. You see where it's about 30 students, although there are some undergrads. And in fact, I think some of you did it this summer. That's going to be a great opportunity for anyone who's kind of undifferentiated, because diabetes and obesity name a specialty that they do not impact. So consider that if you get well into the year and you're just, and you know you want to do a lot of research, but you're just not sure yet at all of the specialty direction. And the application for that isn't until mid-spring. That's a full summer paid program where you are working, you're working a lot of hours. Again, because it's paid, it's almost like a summer job. The first 4 are all in that boat, by the way, where there's sort of an intense experience. The trade-off is you're getting some pay. It goes on your resume as a formal experience, but it's also a lot of time commitment. The Neuroscience Fellowship is similar. It's very small. I've seen them take more than 2 students, but it varies. Obviously, if you're interested in neurology or neurosurgery, that can be a great fit, but you don't have to be interested in those areas. The Family and Community Medicine Fellowship is also fantastic for people that are kind of broadly unsure, because it's going to be stuff that could be applied to almost any specialty interest. And I could see some projects there that might have a little bit more of a population health angle or a health equity angle, if that interests you. The OB-GYN program is for students interested in OB-GYN. This is a great example of, if you do that program and then decide you want to be a radiologist, you should absolutely keep that program on your CV. You should finish it out and do the very best you can, because it's going to look great on your CV. It doesn't matter if the narrative you craft is that it helped you decide you didn't want to do OB-GYN and so moved in another direction. That's not a waste of time. The important thing is that you finished it out and you had a high quality experience. The CARE grant is for students considering health equity related research. It overlaps as well with population health. That one's a little bit bigger. It begins at the end of M1 year, but it can continue for a whole year. And it also provides a good bit of funding. So if you have like a big expensive idea, that's probably your best bet that provides funding for the project, not just a stipend for you. And then the Behavioral Science HSTART Fellowship also has a population health or health equity angle, and similarly begins in M1 summer, but goes throughout the year. Then you've got some regional hospital partnerships. So in Northern Kentucky, you have St. E. Bowling Green has a couple. There's a new one that your dean is excited to have developed with Western Kentucky. So if you want to stay local, you can absolutely look for those opportunities through Dr. Honorato or Dr. Morris. And regional campus students, you are all eligible for these other programs, but a lot of them would expect you to be in Lexington, not all of them. So that's something to look into if you're considering one of the Lexington programs. Do you have somebody you want to live with for a few weeks versus staying for a local opportunity? And then the Churchill Fellowship I have towards the bottom because it's a little bit unique. It's a super exciting program. Those students you see in the picture at the top were the initial Churchill Fellows 2 years ago. That is 10 students, and they're learning the ropes of QI involvement, which is super popular with our students. It's essentially how to make hospitals safer and more efficient. It's a little more fast moving than standard clinical research. And it's just a really well run program. It runs beautifully. The trade-off for that is you don't get paid and you don't necessarily get a publication. It's pretty small scale, but it's only for the month of June. And as you can see, these students, they got a publication they got a poster at a regional conference out of it. They actually won a research award because they did such an awesome job. So if you're thinking, I want to do something, but I don't want to spend the whole summer on it, Churchill would be a good opportunity. And then you see those in development, they're all going to follow the Churchill model of like working with the librarians to develop a project or doing a medical education study. Those are all unpaid, but the trade-off is it's more flexible. You can kind of pursue something over the summer on your own schedule. My tip there is, unfortunately, to try to get your schedule straight, by January or so. Like if people are getting married, if mom and dad want to take you on a big trip, if you want to go on a big trip, try to get those dates straight, because a lot of those programs have pretty intense expectations of, you cannot miss a day, or if you're going to miss, we need to know ahead of time, especially the ones like Churchill that are only a 4-week commitment. They will expect you to be there every day. So try to get your schedules planned out in advance so you know what you can commit to. All of these are the formal things. This does not count the concentration, and this does not count summer unofficial experiences. Like if a student was just working with me on a med ed data set and I'm not paying them and it's not like a named opportunity, you can absolutely still have many students have fantastic experiences that way and have more flexibility to just kind of pitch in as time allows. So if you connect with a great mentor, y'all can decide, do we want to submit for one of these big formal things that's kind of a huge time commitment, or do I want to just work with you kind of informally working towards a given outcome, and you'll have plenty of different opportunities there. Let's see here. One other thing about electives to note, next summer you are not enrolled. So there are research related electives, but that's not a summer thing. You can't take a course when you're not an enrolled student. So you will find research related elective opportunities like introduction to surgical research. But those are going to be spring M1 or as you return in fall M2 or further into M2. So just keep an eye out whenever you get, again, read your emails about things like, here are all your elective opportunities, or here are all your concentration opportunities. Read them and think about things that might be great experiences for you that aren't going to be happening over the summer, since you're essentially choosing to do whatever you like over the summer. We're not going to be able to like teach you a formal course at that time. Okay, I feel like, oh man, I gave myself 3 whole minutes to spare. I'm happy to stay longer for questions. Please make sure that you email me anytime. I love talking to students. It's much more fun than all the other commitments that I have in my life. So don't ever feel bad. If you ever email me and I don't answer in a couple of days, please email me again. Make sure you're enrolled in Canvas. If you're a Lexington student, come see me in our monthly labs. Talk to me about your research interest. My husband, Tyler Sims, will teach y'all in your second year nephrology course. And we collectively host the med student dinners 3 times a semester. So we invite all the Lexington students to our house for dinner. We invite all the faculty. You can meet mentors there. You can meet people to shadow. You can come pet a horse or pet our puppy. So those are kind of informal opportunities to get more connected here, especially if maybe you're not from Lexington or you're trying to make contacts. Regional students, you are welcome. It's probably not worth the drive, but it's not that you're not invited, and your campuses are super great at creating opportunities like that as well. I'm going to unshare my screen and stop recording and then be able to answer any questions that folks have. So give me a minute.